Alright, so we're getting a little bit of a late start today, so it looks like XSplit wanted to update real fast, so I was a little bit behind, but thank you for joining me again for another art stream. And if this is your first time joining up with me today, thank you for checking out the stream and everything. And I'm hoping we'll get you something that you enjoy watching and maybe pick up a few tips and tactics for your art journey, as in some of those of you guys have been going on with me with all this. Of course, as you're seeing here, from last Sunday, I was still working on this whole little piece here, and for those of you who are not aware, this little piece is from a few years back, from a comic book series, a character named Rage from a comic book series, as you can see her over here, from Adam Withers and Comfort Love. It's called The Uniques. It's a really cool series, and if you haven't never checked it out, I highly suggest you do so. Sorry. It's been one of those days. With everything with this, as y'all can see, this is some old line work and everything. And for those of you guys that are not aware, that may be checking out the stream for the first time, I had did this piece for my way of saying thank you to Adam and Comfort for allowing me to do some flats and stuff for their comics way back in the day and everything. So this is something I had drawn up and everything for them. Is just my way of saying thank you for giving me the opportunity and teaching me. And one of the reasons why I'm showcasing some of these older pieces, if you have caught my previous streams, you probably would know, but I'm trying to show people like the progression of things, of how you change over time and how your skill sets improve and everything, and how you go forward, and how you pick up little things and stuff as you go along. Now, one of the questions that I've got a few questions that some of you have asked me personally. Some of you guys are on my art page and stuff, and I'm going to go over some of that today. Some of those I've already answered within the post earlier this week on the coloring questions, color reference, and if you haven't checked it out yet, feel free to check out all the reference materials and stuff I posted, and that might be able to help you with some of your anatomy, getting your structures and stuff down. I've made a lot of collages over the past few years and stuff to help my own self out, but I do have a lot of that stuff posted up, so if anyone's available, and you can find that under the photos tab or look for the post through the news feed on the page itself. Okay, so one of the questions I got was about layer orders, and that's why we're going to start with this, and all the rest of the stuff I'm going to get to that in just a minute. And of course, just to give you an idea, this is just reference material, so I can look at the character and see how the way they did it, how they did the colors and everything, but we'll get to that. So I'm going to start out right here. One of the things that people ask me is like, how do I do my layers and stuff over here in the corner? Now, normally, you know, you can see this is a scanned piece of line art. It was scanned at 300 DPI, so I could get the best quality, and the image itself, everything I'm doing is at 300 DPI. Now, I'm working in RGB versus CMYK, which is really for print. So, but I wanted more of a ping, more kind of web quality is what I'm looking for. But as you know, as I say, you start with your line work here, and as you name, I named most of my layers and everything, so I know what I'm doing, and I've left a lot of these layers out here, so you guys were going to see like a lot of the steps, and even stuff that I have just left unfinished, stuff that I had done previously and stuff, because I want you guys to see the progression and how you build up your pieces and how you merge your layers and everything, and work on different layers and just build up on the process. So with this line art, since I do a lot of ink lines and stuff, what I've been doing is that I start out with my line work, and then I usually start, let's go to the inks right here, as you can see in this little corner, hopefully. You have the ink line over it. So I'm basically going to be, for me personally, I go over everything at least like one time initially. Not in a sense of what you would call tracing or whatnot, but it's more of just, as I've stated in previous streams, I've said in previous videos, and Lord knows I've talked to people about it, I see everything in lines. And what I mean by that, because that was another question I got, is what do you mean you see everything in lines? Well, what I mean when I see everything is I see the outline of the shapes, an outline of the character, of an object and stuff. It's kind of like more of seeing a symbol of what something is, a symbol of what I think an eye should look like, or what I think this arm should look like. It's not really understanding so much of the structure of what's going on the inside. So that's something I had to learn to adapt around for my own self on how I progress and how I do things. And a lot of times, as you guys see, because let's get rid of this line art so y'all can see that a little bit more. And put up this white background. It's kind of like just pulling over, and I've gone over it a few times already, where I just keep building up. And if you caught my previous streams with the Sesame Street piece I did a while back, you can see what I meant about taking the line art and building up on it, and just building and building until I get this better variance of what I say thick to thin line work on your inks and stuff on your containment line. And as you can see, I pretty much have a very hard containment line on most of the stuff I do. So it's kind of what they used to call dead weight line, where you have a thicker outline on the outside of the character or the piece or whatever you're drawing, and then thinner lines at the end to kind of balance that out. And that's just the way I do it. It's not how everyone does it. And like I said in my previous streams too, when it comes to like putting this ink line, what I call ink line, over the character and everything of what you're doing, is that you do want to have some variance. You don't want it to be flat, and that's one of the problems that I still struggle with, is that I still struggle with trying to make sure that everything has some variance and some different line width instead of just one line. As you can see right here on her braids, this character is, you know, where it's coming out, is that this is pretty dull, you know, and doesn't really work. I mean, so, and you can see I did some thick lines here, and I've done a little bit on some of the same layers, so y'all can see some variance as I'm going over it and everything. So let's go ahead and add the rest of that, if this thing will be nice and cooperate with me for a moment. It was see if we get this thing to work. And like I said, yes, there's a lot of layers here. So we're going to go to her braids, which it looks like I misspelled that, but that's okay, because normally nobody sees that but me. And as you can see, I went back and added some thicker lines just to make these braids pop, to make her hair pop out a little bit more from the flatness of what was there. And I decided too, going off, as you can see the way they were doing it with her hair and stuff, there's all these little cross-hatching lines, and it looks like they mainly did that with the pencil. I don't know that for 100%, and I just tried to experiment a little bit on the inside and added all these stuff, but they got really busy. So I was like, we're probably gonna have to take it out. So, but I did decide to leave a lot of it there. I may change some of it here and there on that. And then let's go ahead and bring up the, as you can see, these are all on different layers. So I can go back and make corrections and add stuff too. That's another thing too. Like when I did the thick lines on her braids, I didn't want to mess up the line work I had already taken all that time on her hair. So I decided to put it on a different layer so I could manipulate the lines and erase that out or make the adjustments and everything, so I wouldn't have to worry about destroying the work that I already had. So we're going to put the thorns in, and as you see, we have the thorns, and we'll go with these flowers and leaves. And you can see it kind of pops a little more. Now initially, if you call it the last stream, and you could probably have seen from the line work, again, it's the same thing up here on this little thorn vine thing. This is kind of incomposing, you know, the composition itself around her. And I've taken out some of it, but not all of it. If you notice, there is some line variance here. It's not always the same, because, you know, having the same exact thing is kind of dull. It's kind of just, you know, it's too perfect. It's not what you're trying to see. And my line art, as it is, even with this, is still pretty contained, and it's very, you know, I'm very precise. And as I often said, and I've been told, it kind of looks like a coloring book sometimes that you color over, which that works too. So, but as you can see, you know, I have all this line work and this ink lines and stuff all up top. And so down below, because people were asking me, well, how do you do your flats? I was coloring over my ink line, and it was just covering over. Why is that happening? And that's a simple fix. It's a simple thing. You actually want your flat layer, as I'm going to put up here, underneath your ink line, because it's actually placing it on top. So with the whole idea of layers is that, think about it, that you're building up and building up. So if you do want this strong kind of like ink line, containment line, or whatever you would like to call it, you need to keep in mind that your colors are going to have to be underneath. Now the way I do things, because I am very influenced from animation, comics, and from video games back in the day, from retro games, I want everything to look like almost like an anime cell. It's to the best of my ability. So that's why I do kind of this cell shaded, kind of the way I do things and stuff, of how to do, you know, but it's still kind of the same initial way that you're going to be putting things out. Even if you're painting, and there are some amazing painters out there. and I am highly impressed of how they do things, and it's amazing techniques. And so you wouldn't have to worry about this because you'd be building up and you're doing blends and you're putting it all together and everything. So it's, you know, you got to keep in mind of what you're trying to achieve and the way you do things. And basically what I'm showing you here and what I've been showing in the last streams is how I do things and the ways that it works for me, and things and techniques and stuff that I picked up. And that's something that you got to keep in mind as yourself, is that, you know, you pick up different things that work for you. And as I stated earlier, you know, I see everything in these shapes and outlines and stuff, but that can't be a crutch. I can't allow myself to say, well, this is just the way I draw. This is just how I do things. No, I still have to push myself to think about what's on the inner structures of things and how to build things up. And you need to do the same thing on everything you're doing. And that goes back to the other question I was asked, is that when I said in the last stream, when I said, don't care what people think about your work, just do it. And let me give you some little clarification on that. So, because one of the things is, well, do you not care what people think about your work? Well, of course I care what people think about my work. Of course I want people to enjoy it. But what I was meaning by that particular phrase was the fact that you need to not allow yourself to be so caught up with if it's good, if it's perfect, if it's great, or whatever, if it's not good enough, that you hinder yourself from moving forward. And that's one of the things I hear a lot from artists starting out, or people at my level, or whatever, because there's people who are so much better than even me. And I don't, like I said many times before, I don't think that my artwork is the greatest ever, and I still make mistakes and I still mess up, but that's okay, because art in itself is a journey and you get better as you go along. So don't get so caught up, for all you asking me about that, like, well, should I be concerned about what people think? Yes, to a degree, but be concerned of what you think. You know, push yourself. Don't just accept things for the way they are. Push yourself on every single piece you do, every step of the way. Every time that you're doing something, you want to make it better than the last time. Work on the things that you struggle with, whether that be anatomy, form, but find ways of techniques from what you're learning from videos like this, from reference materials, videos across the web, you know, artists, if you're fortunate enough to have instructors or mentors or artistic cohorts as I have, you know, asking them questions about things, and just try to build up on your repertoire, but don't allow your anxieties and fears to stop you. And honestly, I'm speaking from experience, because once upon a time I did that. You know, I allowed my fears and anxieties to get the best of me, and I actually stopped drawing for 3 years and wouldn't pick up a pencil. I wouldn't even pick up anything because I didn't think I was good enough. And it took me years to get past that. It took me years to get over that hurdle, and I still deal with those anxieties. Hence one of the reasons why I enjoy doing these things and trying to reach out to other artists like myself, or people who just have doubts about what they're doing and stuff. And I'm not gonna lie, I have lots of doubts and anxieties about what I do, but I still think it's important, if you have the passion to do art, if you enjoy what you're doing. And that's true for anything that you're, you know, chasing after. Even if you're not an artist, keep fighting for that. Keep working towards those dreams. Because that's what matters. Even if you don't achieve everything that you are wanting to accomplish, it's the journey of trying to do so that will fulfill that need, that desire. You know, and as an artist, as a creator, and if you are a creative person, you know, that's something that really can sustain yourself while you're working regular jobs or whatever you're trying to do, because it gives you a sense of completeness, and I can understand that. But enough of this rambling. I'm going to continue on here. Let's continue doing some art. So going back, so we had the inks, we had the line work, we put the inks up, we got the flats, and then the next thing over here, as you see right here, it says tones. And that's where I've already started to put a little bit of this tone work down and everything, and tones are pretty much what I would say shadows, just trying to have, and this is pretty much two cell, you know, to me, you know, it's two forms, one little darker tone than what is there. And as you can see, you know, I did source some of this material from the lighting source and stuff, and I made some adjustments here or there on some of the things. And as you can see, her hair over here, this is actually a dark purple. And I haven't completely decided if I want to do that because I really enjoy this little purple thing I've got, but I'm going to have to darken that in at some point. But this is where I'm at, and you can see there's a lot of darkness over here that's going to have to be cleared out. So again, this is not a completed piece. It's still work in progress. There's still a lot of things that's got to be added to, just like I probably will go back and add some tones along the vines and stuff and everything here to try to, you know, make that little pop a little bit more. But because she has this really white background, and as you guys saw, there's a symbol behind her, I went ahead and put this blue. And I thought that kind of, you know, grounded the composition a little bit and gives her, it's not the same purples that we're seeing here. It's a little bit variant, but it's in the same kind of complementary feel that I feel that it kind of works. Plus it goes with the idea of she has some kind of weird stars. I'm not exactly certain what I was looking for back there. And I have two levels of this right here, as you guys see. Let me turn this back off real fast, where I have stars where I drew the little circles and stuff in and everything here. And then instead of messing with all this work that I did and losing that, I did in fact make a copy right here, and it says stars copy, and I'm gonna put that on, and you can see I got this little purple outline where I took the time under here. As you see, there's an outer glow going on around that to give it that kind of little glowing effect. And yeah, that's under your effects and stuff and all that, but I didn't want to mess with the line art, so as it said, the ink lines and stuff. I wanted to leave that separate because it's just experimenting right here of how I wanted to do the background and whatnot. So as such, as you can see, the character right here has this really cool, unique little symbol that the creators drew in to show like her psychic abilities. I think it's some kind of psychic telekinesis. Forgive me if I get that wrong. But I had also gone through, and the last stream I was going over the fact that I did this kind of using the circle marquee tool, and to make this huge circle to go around to kind of line this up. Now it's not perfect. There's some problems here, there's some variants and all this, but it was just something that I was choosing to do on the way I handle it. And as you can see, they drew this in by hand mostly. So it's not perfect, except this line's a little bit smaller than that line and everything. But for me, I wanted to try to have it as uniformed as I can make it, and that's just a personal preference. And again, I did the same thing here because I was going to mess around with the highlights, and I did this little outer glow and inner glow, and I wanted that to pop some. So let's go down to that blue, and you can see another reason why I chose this blue background behind her. So that makes everything to me really pop. And to tell you the truth, this little outer glow thing on this, as you can see, they have it on the inside. More of a feel is it's white, and it has the purple outline, I think, going around it. And I could follow the same suit, but I kind of like the way this is looking so far. I kind of like the way it's like this little highlight, kind of neon sign, hologram look or whatever, as you see in like sci-fi movies and stuff, at least from my visual perspective. And I may keep that over time, or I may make some adjustments and stuff, and hence that's why I've been making the copies of the line work that was already there, because I want to kind of see how I want to do the colors with it. I want to experiment a little bit and try to do something a little bit different than what I've done before. And again, with all this color, this is another reason why I went back over these thorns, and some of the flowers are still going to have to probably have a little bit more lines that pop them out a little bit more, because it was getting lost under all this around it, especially when the colors were started getting popping in. So I had to be aware of that, and I'm like, okay, so I'm going to go over it one more time. And again, that's what you kind of do. For me, I just keep building up and building up until I get what I'm looking for. Alright, so let's go ahead. Now I've done some quick highlights, experimenting with that too, to kind of give you guys an idea of what that looks like. And of course, it's around her little choker, or I can't think what these are called, where her little the choker around her neck and everything. So I put this little height similar to what they were doing here on that, and I wanted that to have that add in and try to make that pop a little bit more. And I call that highlight because you don't when drawing over, coloring over black, you have to have something that's a little bit lighter. And as you see in the ink line over where this little screenshot right here, it's still even there on the ink line itself. So And then the second highlight is that they have this really cool purple glowing effect to show her powers and everything, and you know, her powering up. And I was like, oh, I want to kind of mess with that too. I want to add this little glowing effect. And instead of doing what I did with the graphic in the background, I went ahead and made this a white line and used a other glow, an inner glow for this, and the outer glow to make it pop around during stuff. And that's the way that I was doing it. It's probably something similar that they did for the glowing effect, but I'm not 100% about that because everybody does that kind of different. This is just the way that I was taught and the way I figured out things. But I'm not very certain if I'm going to keep this because, you know, you got a lot of little stuff here and there. It's mixed up and everything. So, but it was just a quick pass over through just to show you the highlights and everything, just how I was going to do the glow to kind of go with this overall effect. And it may be too much, to tell you the truth, and I may go back and tone it down a little bit, make it a little bit smaller, just like these stars originally had a really wider glow, and it was just getting too busy, just like it was when I was drawing all these cross hatchings inside of her hair and whatnot. Now, I'm going to also talk about, for a moment, I wanted to go over and explain what this picture is. Now, this is right here is from my, you know, artistic horror Joe Weatherford, and, you know, and sometimes I stop and step away from the piece for a while I'm working stuff and try to see what I had wrong or what I'm working on. And one of the things, or I send it to a friend, you know, one of my core hearts or whatever, to look at and say, hey, you know, does this look right to you? Is this wrong? I mean, what am I doing wrong? Because sometimes we miss things. And you have to kind of be able to do that for yourself over time, but it's still good to step back and look at your piece, and as you work on it, and take it all in and try to see little problems and stuff you're having, or let somebody else look over it for yourself. So one of the things he said, he goes, hey, I think your head's wrong. The back of her head seems to disappear right here. It seems really, you know, really too low. And I didn't see that at first, and of course I went back and tried to add that up. So let me go ahead and get rid of all these tones and everything so you guys can see that, where I went back over everything and get an idea. But he was very kind enough to help me with that, and I believe he's right. I believe I messed up the back of the head, even though I thought I had it. And again, that's just part of it too. That's just like, you think you got things right, you think you've done something, and then it's just like, I gotta draw all that over again, I don't want to do that. And you're just like, well, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having to draw over it again. You know, it's just, and that's one of the reasons why I prefer doing things on the computer. And that's another thing too. If you do stuff traditionally and you're doing things by hand, and I know a lot of artists that do, and they do some amazing work. So you have to also, you know, you have to find back, going back to what I was saying about what works for you and how you do things and stuff. I still draw mostly by hand because I love drawing by hand. I can draw on the computer, but I prefer to do it by hand first, and then I do the rest of my steps within the computer itself. So one is not better than the other, just for you guys out there who are wondering, well, I draw with markers, or I do everything with pens, and you know, I paint. I mean, I don't use the computer. Is he saying I have to use the computer to have my art? No, that's not what I'm saying. Not at all. So you have to find out what works for you. Now, mixed media, if you do like painting or something, and then you want to throw it in the computer and elaborate on that, it's like taking photographs and doing photo manipulations in the computer. You know, all these things are tools. The computer programs like Photoshop, the way we use our templates and stuff, you know, like even this circle thing back here where I used the marquee tool over here to make this little graphic. I would probably originally had done that when I did the line art. I used a circle template that I had for a pencil that different artists use for different things. So like I said, just remember that everything you do is a set of tools, and you have to find out what tools and stuff work for you and how you like to do things, and embrace that part. But never stop yourself from experimenting with other things that you may not have tried before. You know, if you decide, hey, I want to try doing charcoal today or something, all that will help you to grow as an artist. And you know, the best thing still, as I stated in the last streams, is your foundations, understanding your anatomy, understanding your forms, understanding how you see things, understanding dimensions, perspective. All these things are very important, and it's all these skill sets that you will build over time. How you go about that, where you do it traditionally or you do it digitally, doesn't matter. What matters is what works for you and how you want to do with your own artistic journey and how you want to continue producing your art. So, but let's go ahead and go to show you these little red sketches I named it here, which Lord knows that's probably misspelled too. So as you can see, I made the opacity on this, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so y'all can see. So when I was looking over and I was trying to make adjustments, I originally drew this in black, and I was just coloring it over and trying to say, well, it needs to pop up a little bit more. And I'm still not, since I was working on that today, I'm still not 100% on if the head is completely right or not. I know I had to make some of this. Some of this I'm not really too happy about with her forehead, so I'm still probably going to go back and make some adjustments. But I did make it red because I wanted you guys to see, and I had taken the initial line and drew it on top. So I could, ink over it, and then I moved it down. I took the sketch here and moved it down underneath the layers and put it on top of the ink layer I had already, and then I merged those together so I wouldn't have to, and then I didn't damage what I had already done. The same kind of theory with the braids here, so where I have the basic one-time line work underneath there, and then I just went over it on a different, and eventually I will probably merge all of this together just to save space too. I may have to, just because the more layers you have, especially in Photoshop, the more it slows down your computer. So you have to be aware. So over time we add, I may have like multiple layers and stuff about things. And then I even went back here on this red sketch to try to understand, where was her head? Did I do something wrong? And I'm still, like I said, I'm not 100% about this, but I wanted to go back and say, well, maybe I did. So I went back and did the eyes again, nose, put out my basic shapes, my basic foundation. I wanted to line up, and as you can see, the end of her chin, it comes out, so it doesn't completely follow that. So when you're putting down your foundation and getting the basic form, keep in mind that the human body doesn't look exactly like the mannequin that you're putting down or the basic foundations that you're doing. There will be adjustments based upon facial structures, nose, size, ears, anatomy, gender. There's so many little things that go along. Now don't get overwhelmed by that, but that's just part of it. So, but I did go back and draw this, and I'm still not 100%. You can see even I started going on top, like maybe it needs to be a little bit higher. But I'm gonna have to go back and look at that later. But just to give you an idea that even when you think you're done or you're working, you're still going through it, you're still building up on it and whatnot. So let's see what else. And then that's another thing too I want to show you. Now, if you see right here, she has this really cool long necklace now, and some of the other references, the necklace is shorter and whatnot, so I wasn't 100% if I wanted to put this necklace in here. So initially what I did is I took the pen tool, because I decided, after speaking to Joseph again, we decided, this necklace has got to be in there. All that's got to be there. So I went ahead and took my pen tool and made the lines for where I thought the layers of the necklace would be, how far it goes down. Now, of course, unless I just wanted to go over the vines here, this is actually not going to be seen. So all this will be erased out and whatnot. But I just want to get a kind of general idea instead of having this really thick. So initially I had a little sketch and it was really, really busy. And I was like, I can't even really tell. So I decided to go over that again with the pen tool. And then on top of that, then I have the beginnings of the sketching of this whole necklace that she's got here. And you can see there's that line underneath of the whole initial sketch, which, as you see, it's great because I knocked down the opacity. I didn't change it to gray, I didn't draw any gray, I just knocked down the opacity so I could draw over it and keep kind of where my perspective, or where I'm trying to go and what my trying to achieve there, and line it up so I don't have to do it over and over. And that's the same way you would kind of do when you're drawing with a pencil, or doing, as they say traditionally or whatever, you would draw it out and you build up on layers on top of layers. Since one of the reasons why we have layers in Photoshop, because we build up on top of that. But as you see, I got the little beginning of a sketch here, and what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll refine this and clean up, and I'll probably knock over here, get rid of this one sketch, as it were. Well, we'll give this thing a few moments to catch up. With this, I may just be overloading this poor thing. I'll go ahead and hit it down so you guys can see. Well, this is almost what happened last time when I did it. I thought maybe if I didn't have all the windows and I was switching through all the windows again, it would kind of calm down. But it seems more of my computer is having the issue of keeping up with everything than the actual internet problem. So hopefully this will be done in a minute. But basically what I'll do, as I was stating, I'll get rid of this and then I will lower the opacity over this necklace. And then I'll start drawing over it and I'll start refining it and everything. Now I could use the pen tool again and completely go on the outer edge of it, doing the outline of the necklace and then going on the inside and drawing it in and making the little cylinders and stuff. Or, as I've been forcing myself to do more and more, I'm going to try to do everything by hand, as I did here, and just build up upon it over and over until I get kind of something that I'm happy about. And even then, I'll have to go back and clean it up a little bit, because as you can see up here, even the braids where I went back and did a lot of this by hand, all over, just to have that little line variance and stuff, and just to make it look a little bit more not so mechanical, you know, not so mathematical format, because that's the problem with the pen tool, or when you make the computer kind of draw for you, it can get really flat. And again, my stuff can be really strong and contained and flat, so I have to keep that in mind as when I'm drawing. Like I go back and erase things out and use the eraser tool, not just to erase mistakes, but it is a drawing tool too, and just slowly, you know, kind of redraw these lines and stuff to add that little variance and everything. So, you know, just to make it look like it's more flow, just to add more depth, if that makes any sense to you. And even then, where I did the same thing up here on the bottom of her chin, since this thing's still taking a minute to load, you know, when I initially drew it, it was one strong line because my brush messed up for a minute. So instead of redrawing that line where it was, I decided, well, I'm gonna go back and, you know, kind of erase this out and, you know, go through it and give it that nice little curve and stuff. And as you can see here in the little picture, you know, it was more of a straight on edge instead of this fine little tip, you know, where it's a little point right here. So I decided I wanted to thin that out a little bit. And, you know, I might still go back and do the same here on part of her neckline. There's some of the stuff here that I want to do. There's these little sketches right here between, you know, her chest and stuff that needs to be, you know, I may thicken those out a little bit more as well. I may clean some of this up. And like I said, it's still a few more steps, but I wanted you just to initially see as you go on that it's a building process. You know, you keep building up and building up, at least the way I do it. You know, and how it would be the same way if you were painting this, and, you know, painting it traditionally, painting it digitally, but you just keep building up on what's there until you pretty much refine it, and you take as much time as you need it, unless of course you're on a deadline and somebody is paying you, then you got to get it done. So, but don't get so caught up on how your things look initially. Only worry about how it looks when you feel it's finished. When you're done with it, then you can critique yourself very strongly. Then you can have someone take a critical eye to it and go, man, that's a lot of problems, or I like what you did there, but you needed to fix this. And then if you choose to go back and fix that, if you say, okay, this is worth my time, I'm gonna go back and fix it and try to improve upon what I did, great. But if you decide, well, you know, I was just messing around, or it's just a sketch, I'm not really worried about it, I'll do better on my next piece. Well, you can do that, but also be aware to do that. Don't just, you know, stop yourself from working. That's what I also meant earlier about improving yourself, about pushing yourself further. Don't just accept just the way the things they are right now, because you can do more and you can get better, and you will get better, and it may take time. It's taken me many years to even to get to where I am at now. Do I regret that? No, because that's part of the journey. That's part of where I had to be, things I had to learn, stuff I had to work through and stuff. And you probably are going through some similar things. Well, folks, it looks like this thing is not going to fix itself anytime soon. So I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Hopefully, at least we got through most of it. At least it was on the ending part instead of the very, you know, in the middle like it was last time, right? So hopefully I can get more of that worked out. But thank you again for joining me, and thank you for your questions, and thank you, and keep those questions coming, and feel free to leave the questions in the comments and stuff. Some of you who know me personally, ask me any questions, because it may be somebody else may have the same question as you do. And anything I can do to help anyone on their artistic journey, I'd be happy to. And I know I will state this, I don't know everything, and there are a lot of people out there that are really, really good, and I know some of those people very well, and I'll be happy to ask them what they think and stuff, and pass that information along to you, or pass you into their direction. But I do hope this somewhat more helping you, and I hope that answers some of your questions about the layers and how I do things and stuff, and just keep those coming. And thank you for watching it with me, and look forward to next Sunday, where I will be working on my next piece, and I should have this one and hopefully another one this week to be posted up on my art page, some completed as I did with the Sesame Street a few weeks back. So thank you again, be good to each other, my friends, and never stop dreaming.